Hello friends, day 82 and I've got to John o' Groats. First of all, let me tell you about today. So I woke up this morning to horrendous winds again, 50 miles an hour or so, and rain battering the tent, and I decided the only thing to do was get up in case the tent tore again. So I got up and walked my way the 8 miles or so into John o' Groats, and it was horrendous, it really was. But I got here. I had promised myself an ice cream sundae when I got here, but I was so cold and I decided that that probably wasn't the best thing to do, but I did get one later and you'll see that soon. Shortly I'm going to have a bit of fun and do an awards ceremony because people do keep asking me what my favourite so far is and that sort of thing, so that's coming up shortly. Before that, let me set you another musical conundrum. Tomorrow I will be a track from the Allman Brothers Band album Brothers and Sisters. See if you can work that one out. If you can, stick it in the comments. So, let's have the awards, shall we? People do ask me a lot about what my favourite view has been and my favourite trail and so on. So let's have a few awards. So the first award is for the best trail, and I'm going to award that jointly to Offa's Dyke Path and the Pennine Way. They were both superb. Best view was on the Pennine Way, and that was High Cup Nick, and that was on day 47 if you want to check that out. The weather was bad, but hopefully you'll get some idea from the video. The best room with a view was just after the Falls of Glomac, and that was on day 70. And that was superb, I think partly because of the light, but it was a brilliant view. I just loved camping there and just sat there watching the view for hours. The most novel places I stopped were the beach hut in Cornwall and Sarah's treetop house in Langport. The place I'd most like to go back to is Hargest Ridge. I loved it there and I would love to camp there, but I just got there at the wrong time of day to camp last time, so I am planning to go back there sometime. And coincidentally, the best ice cream sundae was near there at Hay on Wye. That was day 23, and today's ice cream sundae, recommended by one of you in the comments, was also pretty good, but not quite large enough to win the award. The best meals have been at the Rainbow's End Cafe in Glastonbury on day 16. That was great. I've always loved the Rainbow's End Cafe. And I had a brilliant mac and cheese at Castle Carey Hotel. That was on day 60. That was really nice. And then I think probably the best of all was the pizza that I had at Kinlochhew, and that was partly because of the company. I was with Robin that day and we'd had great fun and we just had a really good evening. The whole place was buzzing. The general atmosphere was brilliant and helped along by a few bottles of cider. The best shops, one of those was also Kinlochhew. The post office there was brilliant and they had loads of goodies for walkers. You really must call in there. And the other one was way down in Cornwall at St Ives, the Norway stores. That was fantastic too. But the highlight for me has been the people I've met. I've met so many wonderful people on this trip. People like Carol and Mike and all the regulars at the Forest View Inn. They were the most genuine and welcoming and generous people that I've met on this whole trip. I've loved meeting the Duke of Edinburgh Award students and observers and have gained so much from them, and particularly the dudes of Durham. They were great fun. I had a lovely time with Ofka on Offa's Dyke, and we met up several times and had meals together. And then of course there were people like Carrier Bag Man, aka John, who I met several times, a real character. And Brendan, not forgetting Brendan on the Pennine Way. Brendan seemed to have walked the Pennine Way more times than we've had hot dinners. And then there was Shanty, there were the Bristol Four, Fran, Jules, Roger and Rick, and Dave and his son Harley, who I met near Malham. I think the couple that stand out most in my mind were a couple walking coast to coast, walking to Lindisfarne to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary, and they were planning to walk across the causeway on their anniversary and celebrate, and I just really loved that story. And then there was Robin, of course, the veterinary student from Bristol, who I mentioned just now in relation to the pizza. We spent a couple of days walking together, and it was great getting to know her and have some company for a while. There was Andrew, who we met in a bothy, and he was the ex-head gardener at Balmoral and had some stories about that, but mainly he had walked pretty much every hill and mountain in Scotland and knew them all intimately. It was amazing. Every question we asked him he knew about. And then there was Harvey at the Crask Inn, who was cycling to John O'Groats for the solstice, and Carol and Mike at the Forest View Inn had told him about me, and he said, "Ah, at last, Pink Hat Man." So that was fun. And there was Katrina and Chris, who I met as I arrived at John O'Groats, and they were setting off for Land's End, so I may well catch up with them further down the track. And the reason this camera is shaking around a bit is that the wind is still ferocious here, and my room with a view tonight is in a static caravan, and the whole thing is moving around quite a bit, so excuse the shaky camera. I also want to say a big thank you to everyone who's donated to Hope and Homes for Children. It makes a real difference, and please do have a look at the charity if you haven't done already and see the good work they're doing. I'm also going to post a video that explains what work they're doing on my channel. And then I also want to say to those of you who I've met on the walk who have said things like, "You're an inspiration, I've only done the Pennine Way," or "I've only done Offers Dyke." And I'd say to them, everybody who's achieved their own goal, that's what's important, because as well as Nigel, it's not a race, remember Nigel, I would add it's not a competition either. And if you have achieved your own goal, celebrate it, and let me be an inspiration if you like, but just celebrate what you've achieved, because if you've achieved it, brilliant. And last and by no means least, I want to say a big thank you to Team Pink Hat. So the two Ians, Sue, Isabel, Izzy and Tracy, who've been raising awareness and doing Instagram and all that good stuff for me so that I don't have to. And I'm doing the YouTube videos, so that's the bit I enjoy more. So off I go tomorrow, heading for Land's End. See you on the trail. This is my room with a view tonight. Static caravan. At least it's lovely and warm in here, and I'm not going to get blown over. Well, I hope not anyway. And I have a nice comfy bed to sleep in before I set off tomorrow.